Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We are going to try and crack complexity today,
Ooh, that sounds...
using some pretty cool ideas from this Chinese book. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pronounce it, but I'm going to give it a shot. Yu Zhao Ji Say, cracking complexity.
That's pretty good.
It's all about, actually getting things done.
Yeah.
Even when the problems you're facing just seem so huge and complicated.
I think one of the things that struck me right away about this book is that it kind of jumps right into a hard truth.
Okay.
Which is that, in order to really solve complex problems,
Yeah.
you first have to admit you don't have all the answers.
That's so true. Like, the first step is admitting you need help.
Right.
I'm thinking about, companies like Blockbuster, Kodak, Sears.
Right.
These companies that kind of just went down in flames because they didn't see the changes coming, or maybe they just didn't want to see them.
Yeah. I think the book uses those examples,
Yeah.
to illustrate the dangers of ignoring those big complex issues. And I think that's something we can all relate to.
Yeah.
Whether it's in our work or our personal lives, there's always that temptation to just kind of stick with what we know.
Totally. So how does this book say we should actually deal with complexity? Like, do we just wave a magic wand and make it disappear?
I wish it were that easy.
Yeah.
It's not magic,
Yeah.
but I think it does start with asking the right questions.
Okay.
And I don't just mean, any questions,
Right.
but really well-crafted ones that get to the heart of the issue.
So it's not about asking, what should I have for dinner when you're at a career crossroads?
Exactly.
These are two totally different levels of questions.
Precisely. And the book actually uses this really relatable example of wedding planning.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just figuring out seating arrangements, that's a simple question.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to blend two families with different traditions and expectations, that's where things get complex. And the questions need to be a lot more nuanced.
I'm starting to see the difference. So how do we come up with these super powered questions, the ones that can actually unlock solutions?
So the book lays out these guiding principles for formulating these impactful questions.
Okay.
And first of all, they need to be forceful and engaging, something that really grabs people's attention.
So not just how can we improve, but something more like, what will it take to become the industry leader in the next 2 years?
That's a great example.
Okay.
And the book also emphasizes that these questions should be open-ended enough to allow for a wide range of ideas,
Right.
but focused enough to keep everyone on track.
Okay.
And importantly, they need to be action-oriented.
So instead of just asking, what are the problems, it's more like, who needs to take action? And what specific steps do they need to take to address this issue?
Exactly. And finally, the book stresses that these questions need to be ambitious but achievable.
Yeah.
They should push people to think bigger and bolder, but still feel grounded in reality.
Yeah.
They give some powerful examples like, how can we double our impact in the next 6 months? Or how can we create an amazing customer experience even with our limited budget?
Those are some tough questions, but I can see how asking them could really shake things up and lead to some breakthroughs.
Right.
So we've admitted we don't have all the answers, and we've started asking some tough questions. What comes next?
This is where things get really interesting, I think. The book introduces the law of requisite variety.
Ooh, that sounds important.
Which basically states that to solve a complex problem, you need a team with a diverse range of perspectives and skills.
So if you have a room full of people who all think the same way, they're probably not going to come up with very creative solutions.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Imagine you're a kindergarten teacher trying to manage a classroom full of kids with different needs and personalities.
That's complexity in action right there.
Right. Now imagine you're on a trivia team and everyone has the same areas of expertise.
Oh.
You might do great in one round, but you're probably going to struggle when the topics shift.
Yeah.
And the same goes for executive boards.
Oh, interesting.
A homogeneous group is less likely to identify potential risks or come up with innovative strategies.
It makes total sense. The more diverse the team,
Yeah.
the more likely they are to have the skills and the knowledge needed to actually tackle the problem. It's like the old saying, two heads are better than one, but with a twist.
Exactly. And the book actually goes even deeper into this idea,
Okay.
discussing 12 different zones of diversity and 13 characteristics that make for a truly effective problem-solving team.
Okay.
And this isn't just about having people from different backgrounds, but also considering things like their thinking styles, their risk tolerance, their willingness to challenge authority.
That's so cool. So it's not just about ticking boxes.
Right.
It's about assembling a team that can really work together to tackle complexity head on.
Precisely. And this leads us to the next crucial point, which is In a world overflowing with information,
Oh, yeah.
it's not enough to just gather data.
Right.
We need to turn that data into wisdom,
Oh,
which is
again.
where the book introduces the DIKW model.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break it down for me. What is the DIKW model,
Okay.
and why is it so important? Especially when it feels like we're just drowning in information every single day.
So DIKW stands for Data, Information, Knowledge, and Wisdom.
Okay.
And basically it highlights that simply having a lot of data doesn't automatically make you wise.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, it's like having a million puzzle pieces, but no idea what the picture's supposed to be.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that feeling of just information overload. We're constantly bombarded with data, but are we actually processing it, making connections, turning it into something meaningful?
That's the key. And the book argues that we need to move beyond simply collecting information and focus on achieving shared understanding and then translating that understanding into informed action.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But what does that actually look like in the real world? How do we bridge that gap between data overload and like genuine wisdom?
Well, the book dives into a bunch of different strategies,
Yeah.
but one that really stands out is the idea of moving away from traditional expert consultant models
Mm-hmm.
and embracing what it calls co-creation.
So instead of just hiring some high-priced consultant to swoop in and tell you what to do, you're actually engaging a diverse group of people who are all stakeholders in the problem, like people who
Yep.
are actually living with the complexity on a daily basis.
Exactly. The book challenges this assumption of a talent shortage, calling it the illusion of scarcity.
Okay.
It's not that we don't have talented people. It's that their talent is often underutilized or hidden within organizations.
That makes a lot of sense. So co-creation is about tapping into that hidden potential and
Yeah.
bringing all those diverse voices to the table.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this ties back to what we were talking about earlier, the power of diversity. The more diverse the group, the more likely you are to have people who can see the problem from different angles and come up with innovative solutions.
I'm starting to see how this all fits together, but let's be honest, getting a large group of people to actually agree on anything can be a challenge,
You can.
let alone come up with solutions to complex problems.
Right.
So how does the book suggest we make co-creation actually work?
That's where this fascinating 10-step formula comes in.
Okay.
The book argues that this formula is specifically designed to enable large-scale team collaboration for rapid breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
It helps to create the right environment for diverse groups to come together,
Okay.
share their ideas, and work towards a common goal.
Got it.
And to illustrate how this formula works in action, it uses this really striking analogy, the lion on the desk.
A lion on the desk. I'm definitely picturing that in my head.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
So imagine you walk into your office one morning and there's a lion sitting on your desk,
Oh, God.
casually chewing on something.
I think I would need a new desk after that. But I get the point.
But that's definitely a problem that needs to be solved quickly.
Yes.
And the book points out that as individuals, we react instinctively to that kind of threat.
Right.
We see the danger, we assess our options, make a decision, and act all in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
But organizations, they often move much slower.
They get bogged down in meetings and committees and analysis paralysis while the lion is just chilling on the desk.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Okay.
So the lion represents a complex problem.
Got it.
And the book argues that this 10-step formula can help organizations move from that slow, reactive mode to a much faster, more decisive approach.
I'm really curious to hear more about those 10 steps and how they can help us tackle our own, lions on the desk, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But first, I think it's time to bring in some real-world examples to see how all of these ideas actually play out in practice.
Okay.
So let's meet our first hero, Brenda, and see how she is grappling with her own lion on the desk.
Let's do it. So Brenda's story is like a perfect example of how that illusion of scarcity can really trip us up.
Okay.
She worked for this financial services company called Plesius,
Okay.
and she saw this huge opportunity to partner with Danley Ross, which is this massive healthcare network for older adults.
Yeah, she was basically saying there are millions of potential clients here and we're missing out.
Exactly.
Okay.
But she hit roadblocks on both sides.
Okay.
Danley Ross was worried about overwhelming their members with,
Mm-hmm.
financial stuff.
Yeah.
And Plesius just didn't see it as a priority.
So she had the talent and the resources were there, but they weren't being used effectively.
Right.
It's like they were all individual puzzle pieces, but no one was putting the puzzle together.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where the book's emphasis on co-creation comes in.
Okay.
It's about bringing those pieces together and creating a space where everyone can contribute to the bigger picture.
That makes sense. But how do you actually get people to buy into that co-creation idea? especially when everyone is already busy and set in their ways.
That's where the book's 10-step formula shines.
Okay.
It's not about forcing people to do things differently.
Right.
It's about creating the right conditions for collaboration and progress.
Okay, I'm really curious about this formula now.
Okay.
Can you give us a little preview of what those steps involve?
Of course. So the first step, as we've already discussed, is acknowledging the complexity.
Right.
You can't solve a problem if you don't admit it exists right.
Right.
Then it moves into framing the right question,
Okay.
which Brenda initially struggled with.
So her initial attempts at collaboration weren't working because she wasn't asking the right questions.
Exactly. Her questions weren't forcing people to confront the real issues or see the potential of the partnership.
Yeah.
And without that shared understanding, it's hard to get everyone moving in the same direction.
That's so true. It's like trying to solve a puzzle without knowing what the picture is supposed to look like.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So once you've got the right question,
Okay.
the formula guides you through selecting the right team,
Yeah.
remembering that diversity is key.
Right. Like Brendan needed people from both Plesius and Danley Ross.
Right.
People
Okay.
with different areas of expertise and different perspectives.
Exactly. Then the formula gets into eliminating distractions, setting a clear agenda.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting, designing conflict.
We're designing conflict. Isn't that like the opposite of what you want in a collaborative environment?
It might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but the book argues that constructive conflict is actually essential for innovation.
Okay.
Think about it. If everyone just agrees with each other all the time,
Yeah.
you're probably not going to come up with very creative or groundbreaking solutions.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether, but
Right.
about creating an environment where people can challenge each other's ideas respectfully and ultimately come up with better solutions.
Exactly. It's about channeling that conflict in a productive way.
Yeah.
And the book provides specific strategies for doing just that.
Okay.
Then the formula moves on to guide you through iterative progress, changing the way people interact,
Okay.
and finally translating those insights into concrete action.
Okay. That's a lot to process, but it definitely sounds like a powerful framework.
It is.
Can we hear from another hero to see how these steps work in a different context?
Let's shift our focus to Pablo.
Okay.
Remember, he's the CEO trying to revitalize this international brand conglomerate, Dorigan,
Right.
which is facing disruption from all sides.
Yeah. Pablo's got a real line on the desk situation.
He does.
Consumers are changing, the retail landscape is evolving, the whole industry is in flux. It's
Yeah.
like the ground is shifting beneath his feet.
He's definitely in a high-pressure situation.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about Pablo's story is that it highlights the limitations of those traditional consulting models.
So he initially hired a big-name consulting firm to help him develop a new vision and strategy for Dorigan.
Exactly.
Okay.
And while the consultants did a thorough job of analyzing the market and making recommendations, their solutions didn't quite resonate with the people at Dorigan.
Because those consultants, while experts in their field, didn't really understand the company culture, the relationships, the day-to-day realities of working at Dorigan.
Precisely. The book argues that while external expertise can be valuable,
Yeah.
it needs to be integrated into a process of co-creation with the people who are actually living the challenge.
Right.
They're the ones who truly understand the nuances of the situation.
So it's not about consultants versus employees.
Right.
It's about bringing everyone together in a meaningful way.
That's the key takeaway, and Pablo realized this.
Okay.
He saw that to truly transform Dorigan, he needed to move beyond top-down directives and create a process where people from all levels of the organization felt ownership over the solutions.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this co-creation thing works in practice.
Yeah.
But let's be real, getting a large, diverse group of people to actually agree on anything can be a nightmare.
It can be. Yeah.
Let alone come up with solutions to complex problems.
Right.
So how does the book address that?
That's where those steps in the formula,
All right.
like eliminating noise and designing conflict, come in.
Okay.
It's not about chaos.
Yeah.
It's about creating a structured environment where everyone's voice can be heard,
Right.
but where the conversation is focused and productive.
So it's like having a referee to make sure the debate stays on track and doesn't devolve into a shouting match.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
The book provides all sorts of practical tips on how to facilitate those kinds of conversations,
Okay.
how to ensure everyone feels heard and respected even when they disagree,
Yeah.
and how to ultimately channel that disagreement into creative problem solving.
This is all so fascinating. I'm already thinking about how I can apply these ideas in my own work.
Good.
Can we hear about one last hero before we wrap things up?
Absolutely. Let's turn our attention to Alicia. Remember, she's facing a completely different kind of complexity, trying to address a systemic mental health crisis in her community.
And she's doing this all while dealing with limited resources, a fragmented system,
Right.
and a lot of societal stigma surrounding mental health.
Right.
Talk about an uphill battle.
Her story really highlights how interconnected, complex challenges can be.
Yeah.
It's not just about providing more beds in a treatment center or hiring more therapists.
Right.
It's about addressing the root causes, the systemic issues that contribute to the crisis in the first place.
Right. She's talking about poverty, lack of access to affordable housing,
Right.
involvement in the criminal justice system, all these interconnected factors that contribute to mental health challenges.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that solving complex challenges often requires engaging a wide range of stakeholders, not just those within your immediate organization.
So in Alicia's case, it's not just about getting the doctors and nurses on board. It's about bringing in community leaders, social workers, law enforcement, even the patients themselves.
Precisely.
Wow.
And that can feel incredibly overwhelming, especially when you're already feeling stretched thin.
Yeah, it's like she's drowning in complexity,
Right.
but she's also realizing that she can't solve this problem alone.
And that brings us right back to the power of co-creation.
Okay.
The book argues that by bringing together a diverse group of people who understand the different facets of a problem,
Yeah.
you can start to develop solutions that are more holistic and sustainable.
Okay.
You're not just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. You're actually addressing the root causes.
Okay, so we've heard from 3 heroes, each facing a unique, complex challenge.
Yeah.
What are the biggest takeaways for our listeners?
Right.
What can they start doing today to crack their own complexity?
You know, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me, at least,
Yeah.
is that we need to shift our mindset.
Right.
We're so used to this idea that we need to have all the answers ourselves.
Yeah. Or that we need to rely on a single expert to solve all our problems.
Right.
But this book is really pushing us to embrace the power of collective intelligence.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that no one person has all the answers,
Yeah.
but that by bringing together a diverse group of people, you can tap into this wealth of knowledge and experience that wouldn't be accessible otherwise.
It's like ditching that lone genius myth and recognizing that true breakthroughs often come from collaboration and teamwork.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, it's not just about any team.
Yeah.
It's about assembling a team that's truly diverse,
Yeah.
with people who bring different perspectives, different backgrounds, different ways of thinking to the table.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get those sparks of creativity and innovation.
So to recap, step 1 is acknowledging that complexity is just a part of life,
Right.
especially in today's world.
Yeah.
You're going to encounter it, so don't freak out.
Right.
Lean into it.
Exactly. And then comes the crucial step of asking the right questions. Don't settle for the obvious or the easy questions.
Right.
Challenge assumptions, dig deeper,
Mm-hmm.
and really force yourself and your team to think differently.
Then you need to assemble your A-team.
Yeah.
That diverse group of people who are ready and willing to tackle the complexity head on.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, this team isn't limited to people within your organization.
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
Think outside the traditional boundaries.
Okay.
Bring in your customers, your partners, maybe even your competitors, if it makes sense.
Wow.
Anyone who can bring valuable insights to the table.
It's like building a brain trust with people from all different walks of life.
Exactly. And once you have that team in place,
Okay.
don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
Remember, the book argues that constructive conflict is actually essential for innovation.
Yeah.
Create an environment where people feel safe to disagree, to debate, to push each other to think outside the box.
It's like controlled chaos.
Right.
A crucible where those brilliant ideas are forged.
That's a perfect way to describe it. And finally, remember that solving complex challenges isn't a one-time event.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process.
Right.
It's about constantly adapting, learning, and evolving as you go.
So embrace the journey, be prepared to pivot when needed, and celebrate those small wins along the way.
And one last thought I want to leave you with.
Okay.
Think about the law of requisite variety and those 12 zones of diversity the book talks about.
Okay.
How could you apply that to a challenge you're facing right now, whether it's in your work, or your personal life?
That's a great question for all of us to consider.
Yeah.
What lions on the desk are you dealing with right now? And how can you use these insights from this book to not just react to those challenges,
Yeah.
but to actually leapfrog ahead? This book gives us the tools and the inspiration, but it's up to us to take action.
Well said. This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
It's so empowering to realize that we have the capacity to solve even the most complex problems.
Yeah.
As long as we're willing to embrace a new way of thinking and working.
And to quote this brilliant book, talent is not scarce, but it needs to be activated and brought together in the right way.
Yeah.
So go forth, activate your A-team, and conquer your complexity.
That's a great way to end this deep dive.
Yeah.
I hope you feel inspired and ready to tackle your own challenges.
Me too.
Until next time.
See you next time, and remember, stay curious.